I have to say, it's really nice to meet you. You're even bigger than I expected. I didn't expect you to be a big fan of board games either. Oh, yeah, no, that'd be great. I'd love to have you over for a game night, but, I just think there might be a little bit of a problem. No, it's just, I don't think you're gonna fit in my house. You know what I love? Godzilla and board games. They're two of my favorite passions. 1954's Gojira is my all-time favorite film. I've been a massive Godzilla fan for so long now, but I can still remember where it all began. Actually, it feels like it was just yesterday. I remember it vividly. My grandfather had fallen asleep watching TV. I walked in the room, and what did I see on the screen? 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla, and I was amazed. Shortly thereafter, my dad filled me in on the details of the different movies and monsters, and it wasn't long until I had movie lists and monster lists printed out with pictures, and I had memorized all the movies, years, and kaiju specifics. Back then it wasn't easy to find Godzilla stuff. I still remember when I walked into a tiny local hobby shop and asked for the 1000th time, as I was everywhere, "Do you have any Godzilla toys?" Only for the employee to casually point to a high shelf with a bunch of figures on it. And I still collect Godzilla merch when I can, because Godzilla's the coolest thing on Earth. And it's much easier these days. I can get a little retro Godzilla treat at Target, for goodness sake. There's tons of amazing stuff at Godzilla.com and at Mondo. Not a sponsor, but I wish they were. Even outside of the obvious merch and collectibles, it goes without saying there's a bit of Godzilla everything. Like, for instance, Godzilla Ghost Pepper Ramen, Godzilla Soda, Godzilla Hot Sauce, Nuclear, magnets, comics, tissue box dispensers, movie theater merch. You can get the classic Toho movie scores on vinyl. And the list goes on and on. Sometimes trees in the foggy distance even look like Godzilla. 38 films, a variety of shows, video games, comics, and more. Surely that means there must be an incredible, significant Godzilla board game, right? Especially given the fact that some of the most iconic, well-renowned board games in the hobby are based on famous IPs. Godzilla would be made for that sort of thing, right? I did my best to make this list thorough and comprehensive, but I'm sure it's not perfect. Especially given the fact that there may have been games that were never localized to the US, and they may have flown under my radar, much like Godzilla slipping past humans' radar and just showing up on a beach somewhere. For instance, here are a few that I know nothing about, that were only released in Japan. For these, I don't know too much past their names. Now, if I did miss any, please let me know, but their obscurity would only go to prove my point that no true stunning examples of a Godzilla game exist. And also, we're not going to cover games that are clearly inspired by Godzilla but aren't actually a licensed Godzilla game. For instance, like King of Tokyo, which, much like our own little board game Animal Tokyo, is inspired by Godzilla but isn't actually the real thing.
Excuse me?
But enough of that, let's actually get to the list. Let's travel back now to 1963. Not for that. Yeah, that's better. Where we're going to see Godzilla game. The interesting tidbit here is that it's the first Godzilla toy produced in the US, and only the second Godzilla toy ever made, period, supposedly. Which is where the interesting bits end, because it's just a spin and move game with no depth. 1970s saw Pachimon cards, which were literally unofficial rip-off kaiju anyway, but we'll still count it because Gyrus made an appearance. It was made from two conjoined Godzilla suits, and that's a rabbit hole and a story for another day. But they had sorted it out by the 70s, right?
You never know when Godzilla will be back for another surprise attack. It's the Godzilla game. Only the winner will escape Godzilla's jaws.
He's got my spaceship!
It could be you the next time he shows his face. You'll never know when Godzilla will be back for another surprise attack.
I want to see Godzilla!
The Godzilla game comes.
Now, why isn't that in everybody's home till today, like, Boggle? 1982 saw Mothra vs. Godzilla, which was one of Bandai's Game for Adult If series, which meant it was aimed at an older audience of players. It seems like a very interesting concept of a classic hex-based war game. It came with a standard 2-player scenario, a solo game, and rules for other scenarios with other monsters. 1984, Godzilla electronic war game arrived in Japan and was another intriguing looking take on a hex game. The only comments on BGG are about needing an English translation. Apparently there was a Godzilla game published in 1988 in the gaming zine Aha. One person plays as Godzilla and the other person essentially plays as Tokyo itself, which is pretty interesting. 1990 saw Super Godzilla Tempest, which is a wholly adorable race on Monster Island. In 91, there was a Godzilla Snap game that was just a Godzilla version of that crocodile biting you thing. 1994, Godzilla! You gather marbles and try to avoid Godzilla smacking you around with his tail for up to 4 players. Do you know what there should be? A monstrously fun game of daring, dodging, and squishing. Oh, would you look at that? 1998's Godzilla, based on the infamous 98 American film. But here you can play specifically as Godzilla's foot, and it also comes with dough to make vehicles and stuff out of for, you to squish.
I know that look. You want that game, don't you?
No. What? No, of course not. I mean, do you know where I can get a copy? For the next bit, I have these stickers. Let me explain. I know these stickers came out in 1999 or maybe a little thereafter because the last movie that it covers is Godzilla 2000. And I'm not sure what the game is here. There are clearly elements on these stickers that are for a game. And I managed to get these years ago from a hobby shop, and I can't remember the packaging to save my life. And no matter where I looked, I couldn't really find any information on these online. So if nothing else, it's just cool to have these. 2011 saw 2 interesting additions to the list that feel like great ideas that just didn't have that one little special something. Godzilla Stomp is a cool little card shedding game that ultimately doesn't offer anything shockingly new or really use the theme to the fullest. The artwork is really neat though. And second, Godzilla Kaiju World Wars is a miniatures on a map game that means well but ultimately didn't meet with much positivity, mostly due to fiddly gameplay and rules that took you out of the experience. There was a 2012 game called Godzilla Boom that I can find very little information on. 2015, Godzilla appeared in the pre-existing TCG Battle Spirits. 2019 saw Godzilla Battle Monster Card Showdown, which was a charming, chibi rock-paper-scissors-esque game. 2019 saw Godzilla Total War, which is a hand management take-that sort of card game where you pick a kaiju to join the fray and take your opponents out. In 2019, we also saw Godzilla Card Game, based on the pre-existing Chrono Clash system. And while some of the artwork here is incredible, there are a lot of cool concepts like having giant cards that you could eventually summon out of your deck. The game was ultimately not successful, as it did not have any content past the initial box, which is a shame because it seemed like the start of something good. But the fact that one of the starter decks functionally could not work, coupled with the fact that the gameplay itself left a lot to be desired without many defensive options. Not to mention the fact that I was personally not a fan of the rules. I thought the symbology was just a bit much and not intuitive, and that's coming from someone who likes a lot of heavy Euro games, TCGs, games that have a lot of symbology. Something about it just wasn't easy in the flow of play. When it comes to the artwork, which was mostly good, a lot of it was recycled art from the aforementioned Battle Spirits game, but some of the art was, let's say, inconsistent to say the least. Also, Megalon was called Megaron for some reason. Altogether, a shame, as I believe the idea of this game is a great one. The inclusion of such a variety of classic Toho monsters was phenomenal, but ultimately fell short. Additionally, I'd like to mention Blitzkrieg. It's not really a Godzilla game, but it honestly, as far as games go, the best game that you'll see on this list. The expansion, which you can now get in the base game of Blitzkrieg, includes a Godzilla tile that joins gameplay if someone is playing as Japan, and it's a really subtle thing, but the game itself is so good, and I thought it was a cute inclusion that I couldn't leave it off of this list. In 2020, our friends at the Op put Godzilla editions out of Jenga and Monopoly. Godzilla & Co. also appeared in MTG in 2020, which really shows that year was filled with Godzilla leaving his footprint on a lot of iconic games. Also in 2020, Godzilla King of the Monsters, which looks pretty interesting for a movie tie-in game that I think has a pretty neat look visually, even with the weird cardboard figures. You're playing as scientists working on meeting objectives all while the monsters are battling. And finally in 2020, we have what is arguably the most popular and best Godzilla game that there is, Godzilla Tokyo Clash from Funko. Tokyo Clash is a bit of a mixed bag for me. It's fun, but I don't personally find it outstanding. I think the choices of monsters were great, I like the way the monster miniatures look, I like the idea of how the game works. However, production-wise, I've always been a bit surprised at some of the decisions made visually. The board looks very dark, some of the pieces are hard to discern amongst the others, and the rule set is a bit clunky, not straightforward when it comes to certain things like attacking other monsters, throwing buildings, or interacting with the environment. I suppose it's due to the fact that there are other battling games like Unmatched or Dice Throne that have an ease of play that this doesn't, that makes it stand out a bit for me in that regard. The other fact that in the game you're collecting victory points as opposed to trying to KO the other monster does seem to take you out of the game a bit, and I really hate to say so much negative about the game because there is so much to love. You can clearly tell that a lot of passion for the source material was put into this project, and as a full package the game still has a lot to enjoy. So it's kind of strange to say. I do think Tokyo Clash is the best game on this list so far, but unfortunately it still has enough flaws to hold it back from being an iconic, modern classic of a Godzilla board game. In 2022, we saw Godzilla vs. Kong, which was another movie tie-in that actually integrates with the aforementioned King of the Monsters game from 2 years earlier. Now this is interesting. 2022 saw Kaiju on the Earth Legends Godzilla. This actually is an entry in an established game series called Kaiju on the Earth. It's a one versus many game where one player takes on the role of Godzilla, while the other players are the humans who are trying to formulate successful evacuation plans. I'm really hoping to get my hands on this one. It would require quite a bit of translation in order to play, but it may be worth it. I'm keeping my eye out for an opportunity to play this. I have my suspicions that this game might be the best one yet. During the production of this video, it was just announced that Godzilla Dex for the pre-existing system Universus is coming out later this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a copy to preview for this video, but I will be reviewing it once I'm able to get a copy. And that's it. No, you're right. There definitely should be more. That's not where the story ends at all. Do you want? I'll share some of my ideas if you want. You want me to share some of my ideas? Oh, you up on the hill. It kind of looks like the scene in the... never mind. Don't worry about it. So what could make a Godzilla game actually work? Well, I have 4 ideas. I'll get this out of the way now. All right. Obviously, there's the whole rights situation, and I'm not going to go into that. These are all ideas assuming that licensing is all sorted out and having access to the IP wouldn't be a problem. Let's take a look. I like Tokyo Clash. I don't love it. On some of those aforementioned flaws, I can't really get past them to give it a huge recommendation. But there's something there. Maybe a second edition could iron out some of the fiddly mechanisms and just those little bits of the component issues and the way things look. It could make a much bigger impact. And you could hit the ground running with potential expansions of different monsters. And on that note, I don't know how many Jet Jaguar fans there are in the hobby, but I may know one that has some ideas. It's me, I'm the one. Jet Jaguar was featured in the art of a couple cards from Tokyo Clash, and based on the contents of the card, I'm not sure if it's because he's liked or disliked, but either way, I do have ideas if he was to be included in any expansion or in any game period. So if Jet Jaguar ever comes up as a topic of conversation for any Godzilla board game, you have your guide. I think that there's definitely a diamond in the rough. Now, this might be quite a vague idea, but I feel like it has something to it. A survival game of sorts, whether on a small or large scale, could really work with Godzilla as a concept. Imagine if Pandemic and Final Girl had a baby, where you're either trying to save a city or even just one person trying to escape a locale. I'm the first person to say that a Godzilla game where you don't play as Godzilla or the other monsters does sound kind of boring. But, honestly, this could work great with plug-and-play maps and monsters for a ton of variability. Now imagine a big box, macro dungeon crawl where instead of caverns and forests, you're going through cities or islands. I think the variety in what this sort of game could bring to the table is immense, with limitless potential there. This way you could really celebrate the variety of characters and potential playstyles. Obviously this would require an eloquent play system, something smooth and straightforward, established first as just a good game system, and then integrated the ideas of Godzilla and the monsters. Once you have that established, you could build off of it from the plethora of monsters in the Godzilla universe. Not to mention the hobby's love of miniatures. Can you imagine having the collective cornucopia of a Godzilla cast in miniature form and the quality of the likes of Steamforged or Shadowborn? It would be a dream come true for Minis fans. While traversing the terrains, you could have fully interactable environments with, I don't know, a boss at the end, or maybe some destructive objective. Reverse city building? Now listen, this was my first idea, my laziest idea, and I think my best idea, all rolled into one. Listen, Unmatched is phenomenal. A perfect game system constantly growing with a remarkable cast of playable characters. Just put Godzilla in there. Make it a set. Do King Kong as well. You could put Mothra, Jet Jaguar, doesn't matter, you could put Gamera in there. Now before you say anything, actual size scaling is irrelevant. I can suspend my disbelief if it means getting Godzilla to team up with Sherlock, throwing down with Robin Hood and Tesla. Maybe the rules would be a bit different, sure. Much like the rest of Unmatched, it's all about the sheer ridiculous idea of blending all these characters and worlds together. Restoration has regularly accomplished what I would have considered previously impossible, so I don't think this is too wild of an ask. Unmatched already feels like the serious grown-up version of when you're a kid, and you pull random toys out of your toy box and make characters interact with each other that never should. Since Unmatched already feels like that grown-up dream come true version of that, putting Godzilla in there would just be the ultimate fulfillment of that fun. Yeah, you know, if you don't want to see Godzilla versus Shakespeare, then maybe you don't love fun. Now I know it's easy to just say all of these ideas and just try to put it out there and wish them into existence. But since Godzilla is my favorite franchise, and board games are my favorite hobby, I felt to be remiss not to just share some ideas. Maybe just plant a little, seed out there. A little, you never know what a seed might grow into. Anyway, you know what, Harry? I am sorry that we couldn't let Godzilla come over and stay for game night. Oh, it's alright. He said he's on his way home to play King of Tokyo. Well, we have that. You could have brought it with him outside. No, I think he meant he's going off to play it for real. Oh, okay, yeah, we should go see him off. This video was a lot of fun to put together. It really felt like it was years in the making, taking two of my favorite things, wrapping them into one project, not to mention also being able to incorporate some of my own art and the voices I do for fun, that I hope is entertaining and informative. I hope you've enjoyed this brief dive into Godzilla and board games, listening to my ideas on what potentially could be. Like and subscribe if you did, and let us know if you'd like to see more videos of this style. It's a little different from what we've done in the past. Maybe there will be more deep dives like this in the future. We'll just have to wait and see. But either way, thanks for watching, and in the meantime, play board games like an animal. Any size. I don't know how many huge Jet Jaguar fans there are in the hobby, but I may know one that has some ideas. It's me, I'm the one.